thought maybe to do webinar series, because it's a powerful combination of 8 verses with 8 steps, and somehow or other they do correspond. And it's a very interesting topic, but it is too vast, it is too deep for today. Today I actually thought about another topic, which is we want to see how bhakti transcends any social system, specifically Varnashram Dharma system, because most of you come from India or have some Indian blood in your veins, so you all know about Varnashram Dharma system, the 4 Varnas, the 4 ashrams, and how this has been, let's say, seen in our Bhakti Yoga tradition, and as well as how we can transcend and go beyond, if need be. That is important, because after all, Kṛṣṇa is the one who created the Varnashram system, as we will read in Bhagavad Gita, but he's also the one who inspires us to go beyond. Okay. So today I have a verse from Bhagavad Gita, 18th chapter, verse 48. Sahajam karma kaunteya sadoshamaptina chatyat sarvaramba hidoshtoshena dumenaknir ivartitaha. 1848. Translation. Every endeavor is covered by some fault, just as fire is covered by smoke. Therefore, one should not give up the work born of his nature, O son of Kunti, even if such work is full of fault. Perfect. In the conditioned life, all work is contaminated by the material modes of nature. Even if one is a Brahmin, he is to perform sacrifices in which animal killing is necessary. Tough one. Similarly, a Kshatriya, however pious he may be, has to fight with enemies. He cannot avoid it. Similarly, a merchant, however pious he may be, must sometimes hide his profit to stay in business. Or he may sometimes have to do business on the black market. Oh, but talking about black market, so now it's interesting. It's not a license to go on the black market, by the way. But he says these things are necessary. One cannot avoid them. Similarly, even though a man is a Sudra serving a bad master, he has to carry out the order of the master, even though it should not be done. So despite these flaws, one should continue to carry out his prescribed duties, for they are born out of his own nature. So even though there are faults, even though we might not be always honest in making business, even though the Brahmanas have to kill some animals and sacrifices, even though we should carry out the prescribed duties. It's interesting. So a very nice example herein is given. Although the fire is pure, still there is smoke. Yet smoke does not make the fire impure. Even though there is smoke in the fire is still considered to be the purest of all elements. If one prefers to give up the work of a Kshatriya and take up the occupation of a Brahmin, he is not assured that in the occupation of a Brahmin there are no unpleasant duties. So it's not all bad then. One may then conclude that in the material world no one can be completely free from the contamination of material nature. This example of fire and smoke is very appropriate in this connection. When in winter time one takes a stone from the fire, sometimes smoke disturbs the eyes and other parts of the body. But still, one must make use of the fire despite disturbing conditions. Similarly, One should not give up his natural occupation because there are some disturbing elements. Rather, one should be determined to serve the Supreme Lord by his occupational duty in Krishna consciousness. That is the perfectional path. When a particular type of occupation is performed for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord, all the defects in that particular occupation are purified. When the results of the work are purified, when connected with devotional service, one becomes perfect in seeing the self within, and that is self-realization. Once more the verse number again. Every endeavor is covered by some fault, just as fire is covered by smoke. Therefore, one should not give up the work born of his nature, O son of Kunti, even if such work is full of fault. Strong statement. So, yeah, today I want to speak a little bit about Varnashram, about Devi Varnashram, and how we can go beyond and look beyond it. It's a little more focused. So first of all, what I really liked in this purpose was, even though we should not be discouraged, even though our endeavors are faulty, and we might not always have the perfectional outcome of what we do, the endeavor counts. We often hear that Prabhupada says, the attempt counts, the endeavor counts, because the results are up to Krishna. And we notice, there's another verse saying, if you follow your own duties imperfectly, that's still better than to follow someone else's duty perfectly. So now, of course, we have to find out what is our duty. We'll come to that part. But you see, for example, Arjuna, he wanted to give up his duty. He said, oh no, I'm not gonna fight. That beautiful picture here is actually showing very nicely the moment when Arjuna was somewhat desperate, and he thought like, okay, I'm giving up being a kshatriya. And it might just, take to becoming a yogi. Because easier. I don't need to fight, I don't need to kill, not so much blood, not so much enmity. After all, their family members on the other side, he had to fight. So it was a challenging situation. However, Krishna turned to him and then he spoke Bhagavad Gita. In that moment of desperation. And in that moment of encouraging Arjuna to still continue performing his duty and not someone else's duty. Because someone else's duty would be becoming a yogi and going in the caves of the Himalayas and just meditating and waiting for transcendence or samadhi to arrive or death to arrive. But this was not Arjuna. Arjuna was the greatest archer on this planet. There was no one like him. So how could he put down his Gandiva bow and do this? It's impossible. So now, we are talking about Varnashram Dham. There are 4 Varnas, there are 4 ashrams. You all know, well, 4. For everyone who has not heard what the 4 Varnas and 4 ashrams are, we have the 4 Varnas, which is Sudra. We have Sudra, Vaishya, Kshatriya, and Brahma. And we have the 4 ashrams, which is Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyasa. So these are 8 divisions of our society, you could say. Society is structured in these divisions. By the way, Prabhupada says this is a natural division. It's not artificial. It's not superimposed. It's not that we have to force people to become kshatriyas. There's an inherent spark within their self which says, yes, that's my nature. And even though, we don't have the classical Varnashram Dham system these days, no one actually knows about it. But still we have people who are scholarly, who like to study, who know the verses from Bhagavad Gita. No. Who study Śrimad-Bhagavatam, but they have the interest, there's some, inquisitiveness. And there are some people who like to fight and protect someone else. It's natural. So there's a natural, let's say, inherent nature, so that people do want to fight. There are some who go in the army for 20 years. I had a devotee friend, he was signed up in the army for 12 years. He was from America, he went to Iraq, to Baghdad when this all happened, Afghanistan. It was tough, but because he would always have his Bhagavad Gita and chant every morning with his soldiers, and they would do morning program in their tents and their whatever camps they were. And he said it was tough, but he always felt the protection of Kṛṣṇa. So he was not wavering in his focus. And then we have those who are naturally Vaishyas. They just make money as they go. They don't have to work hard for it, it just happens. They know how to do. They squeeze a little here, they squeeze a little there, and all of a sudden, then some cash comes in. Indians are very good with this, usually. They know how to make some rupees on the side. And then you have the majority of people who are actually sutras, by nature. And it's even said that in Kali Yuga, whoever is born usually has the mentality of Sudra. We don't really have real Brahmins. We don't really have real Kshatriyas, but still, there is some inherent nature. And that needs to be discovered. So we are talking about Dharma. There are many Dharmas, but there are three main Dharmas as Vedic scriptures describe. There's what we call the Manusya Dharma. Manu means humanity. So that is the collective Dharma of humanity. What are we supposed to be doing as a humanity? We should be truthful. Humanity, we should be non-violent, right? Preferably, we should all be vegetarians, if possible. I heard the other day, not long ago, in India, there were 80% vegetarians. 100, 150 years ago. The majority were vegetarians. And then slowly things changed. And then, so that's the collective Dharma. That's where society, humanity should evolve. There should be some higher goal. We should strive towards something. Not just live for the sake of living, eating, mating, sleeping, defending, but there is more to that. Then we have what we call in Sanskrit the Svadharma. And Svadharma means the Dharma related to the self, which is what in modern days we could translate to find your own purpose. It's the Svadharma. So that could be, that you are a Vaishya, you like to be a teacher, you like to work with wood, you become whatever. And then we have, and that is the Dharma which is related to the temporary existence of our soul, Swadharma, because the Swadharma might change next life. Next life you are not again a teacher, or next life you are not again working for this and that company, but there is a Saṇkīrtan Dharma, and this Saṇkīrtan Dharma is the eternal Dharma of the soul. So that is the Dharma which we have in common. So we all have an individual Swadharma, but we have you could say, a common Saṇkīrtan Dharma, which is the inherent strive for the soul to go towards perfection, to go towards loving devotional service to God. That is the Saṇkīrtan Dharma. So these main three forms of Dharma, of course there's more Dharmas of being a man, of being a lady, there's a family Dharma, there is a Grihastha Dharma and all of it. But these are the main three Dharmas. So now, why did Kṛṣṇa give this Varnashram Dharma system? There's a reason for it. What do you think? What would be a good reason for the Lord giving these divisions? Give me one. What do you think? Why would the Lord do this?
Gradual progression.
It's a progression, right? There is room for development, yes. And development towards...
So law and order can be maintained with harmony with everyone.
Law and order, exactly. That people live in harmony together.
That everyone fulfills his duties.
Everyone fulfills his duties, it's true. Because as we will see later on, everyone has a duty. And we need this to structure society, to be able to help develop or help to, let's say, develop, that individual souls can develop towards loving devotional service. It also creates certain roles which uphold certain powers. Like a Brahmin can do something which a Kshatriya cannot do, and the other way around. So there are certain roles. It creates roles which have certain powers, and that's what we need. We need a level of hierarchy, because normally otherwise people they start fighting, they start disagreeing, and then usually what we have is we have some war here, we have some civil war there. So it's good to have a level of hierarchy, which is natural, because if you go in a company, there's a CEO, there are the department heads, there's a managerial level, and the employees. So a hierarchy is natural, it's not an unnatural thing, which is needed for society to live peacefully and in harmony. And it also structures sense gratification. Because if there is no limit to sense gratification, then people usually develop mentality of greed, envy, jealousy, frustration, illusion, fear. If I don't get what I want, I'm afraid. So then all these anarthas come up, all these negative habits. So therefore we need to structure society. And there's a nice verse, 7 verses before, in Bhagavad Gita 1841. In 1841, one moment, now I have to say this. Now I don't have internet, let me see. 1841.
I have it.
Oh yeah, what would you maybe read that? Read that.
The translation is Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras are distinguished by the qualities born of their own natures in accordance with the material modes, O chastiser of the enemy.
Exactly. So it says Brahmana, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Sudras are distinguished by the qualities born of their own nature in accordance with the material modes, O chastiser of the enemy. It is 1841, right? So Kṛṣṇa was the one establishing Varnashram. He said there have to be Brahmanas, there have to be Kshatriyas, there have to be Vaishyas, there have to be Sudras. And that is a natural distinction within society. And however, that Varnashram Dharma system is still a material system. It is yet not a spiritual structure of society. So Varnashram Dharma system in itself is a material system because it just structures how humans interact with one another, how we create harmony, how we live peaceful, don't have war. However, it's yet not, it doesn't in itself have the impetus to its spirituality, to its bhakti. However, Prabhupada describes something like, as you might have heard, as a Devi Varnashram Dharma system. And in the Devi Varnashram Dharma system, there's the word Devaya. And Deva means in one way divine. So there is a divine Varnashram Dharma system if it is centered around God. If all the ashrams and varnas work together towards the development of bhakti. And if that is there, then we call it Devi Varnashram Dharma system. And then it has some value in terms of spiritual development, in terms of bhakti progress. But otherwise, the Varnashram Dharma system in itself does yet not have the capacity to bring the soul back home, back to Godhead. So now, I want to read something of the purport of Śrimad-Bhagavatam from Prabhupada. Prabhupada just confirms this in the purport 5.1.24. He says, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, however, wanted to re-establish Devi or Deva Varnashram Dham. In the Deva Varnashram Dham, there cannot be acknowledgement of social status according to birthright. Because in Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the determining considerations are guna and karma, one's qualities and one's work. So, since many of you come from India, you know you have birthright Brahmins. They think, I'm born in a Brahmana family, therefore I am naturally Brahmin. And you're born in Sudra family, so therefore you're naturally Sudra. And this is a divine order given by Krishna. But as we see, Krishna says actually no. So let me read that. It's 4 Bhagavad Gita 4:13. It says, according to the 3 modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the 4 divisions of human society are created by me. And although I'm the creator of this system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. So the important point is, it's according to one's qualifications and according to one's work, not according to one's birthright. We all know that in the beginning of Kali Yuga, the Kali Yuga could start by demons taking birth in Brahmin families. Because of this birthright, then no one could say much. That was like, okay, he's born in Brahmin family, he must be Brahmin, although the qualities were very much the opposite of Brahmin qualities. So that was actually, it's been described in Śrimad-Bhagavatam, how Kali Yuga came into being by cutting off the head of this Varnashram system and corrupting it, so much so that souls with lower frequencies, you could say, with lower consciousness would incarnate in high Brahmin positions. And because the Brahmin has quite a reach in terms of, inspiring people, lecturing, so therefore society slowly would fall down. But as Krishna actually says, it's not a birthright. It has to be done by qualification. So if one is qualified being Brahmin, then he can uphold the position of being a Brahmana. But if one cannot qualify as a Brahmin, then he cannot uphold the position as a Brahmin. And also, when in Vedic society, Brahmins, Kshatriyas, they had a special education. So they would determine with astrology and also with Kṛṣṇa, different sciences, they would determine what is the nature of that specific child. When it was a Brahmin child, they would get Brahmin education, Kshatriya education, and so on. It was all structured. It was not all in one classroom and everyone the same at the same time, at the same age, but it was very much differentiated. So now, but that's the structure. That is what Krishna says. There are these 8 divisions. However, what is the core of our movement is actually that we realize that bhakti supersedes social structure. Bhakti actually transcends dharma. And I want to give you a few examples from many scriptures and many different leelas how Krishna, Mahaprabhu, and Prabhupada actually was dealing with the social etiquette, but at the same time establishing the supremacy of bhakti. So that means actually the social hierarchies, they, if need be, have to be transcended and have to be even reversed. So that means we are not breaking it. We are not saying no to Varnashram Dharma, but we also don't want to be bound by it. So whenever there's need, we have to follow, but whenever we can, we have to find the essence, or we have to go beyond. So we should not be bound by externals. So one example, as you know, in Vedic backgrounds, lady would follow their husbands. Two structures, a family life. It's not meant to be on top of someone, but it was just to structure family life. So ladies would naturally follow their husbands. However, we read in Krishna book that the wives of the Brahmanas are being glorified above the Brahmanas. You know that story when Krishna was hungry and the Brahmins were so engaged in doing sacrifices that they wouldn't even care about Krishna's needs. But the wives of the Brahmins were so attached, they could immediately feel where Krishna was. So the wives, there's one chapter, the qualities of the wives of the Brahmanas, because they are being glorified above their husbands. And also the wives of the Kaliya serpent are also being glorified above Kaliya. And you know, there is, if you go to Radhakund, there is Janava Mata's like the sitting place. Like Janava Mata was sitting. And Janava Mata was a very, very advanced yogi, you could say. Bhakti, fully bhakti yogi. When she came to Radhakund, all the Goswamis, they had tears in their eyes. Because they could naturally understand how elevated she was. And she was even saying to Raghunath Das Goswami to not kill himself. Because Raghunath Das Goswami, he had so much separation from Mahaprabhu that he was about to, take his life because he couldn't bear the separation. But Janava Mata inspired him not to do so and to use his abilities and his body in Krishna's service. He also told Raghunath Das Goswami to tell everything of Mahaprabhu's pastimes to Krishna Das Kaviraj, who later wrote Caitanya Charitamrita. So all the 6 Goswamis, they were in awe and they would worship her above else. No etiquette needed, no title needed. So you could say, even though there were the 6 Goswamis that were very renounced, they would follow perfectly Varnashram Dharma. They would not associate with ladies here and there. But when Janava Mata came, they realized Bhakti is supreme. Bhakti reigns supreme, which means there was no need for Varnashram Dharma, no need for social structure. Another example is actually in the Jagannath temple. You can read in CC, in Jagannath temple there was one Mataji, she would jump on the shoulders of Mahaprabhu because she saw the deity and she was so in ecstasy, so she was jumping on Mahaprabhu just to see the darshan. And Govinda Das, who was the servant of Mahaprabhu, said, Aparat, take her away. Mahaprabhu really sees it, stop, she's my guru. Because her bhakti is so strong that she would actually have her bhakti has no boundaries. She would actually transcend all the Varnashram Dharma rules and regulations and would be able to just, her desire to see the Lord was stronger than anything else. So Mahaprabhu says, no aparat done, no harm done. So again, here we see bhakti is stronger than social etiquette. There's another example. We were just talking today about Durvasa Muni and Ambarish. And as you all know, Durvasa Muni was a very strong yogi, was a sadhu, very renounced. He had mystic abilities, the Ashtasiddhis. And Durvasa Muni, he offended Ambarish Maharaj. And and Ambarish Maharaj was just a king, you could say, just a king. These days we would say, wow, he was a king. But back then, the sadhus, the yogis, they were superior, Brahmins, superior to Kshatriyas. So, after all, Durvasa means one who is difficult to live with. Dur means difficult, and Vas, when it comes from Nivas, means a place of residence. So, one who is very difficult to live with. So he was a special soul, Durvasa Muni. And he offended Ambarish Maharaj. He had his thousands, I guess it was 10,000 disciples coming with him. But Ambarish Maharaj, because his heart was pure of bhakti, he didn't feel offended. However, the offense would haunt him, and he would go to Krishna and say, Krishna, please forgive me. Krishna said, no, I can't. You have to beg for the lotus feet of Ambarish Maharaj for forgiveness. We have to go there. So, again, is a big yogi, is a sadhu, and we have kshatriyas. But still, then bhakti was stronger. So Durvasa Muni was, in that sense, inferior of Ambarish Maharaj. So there are many other stories. And another one is when Mahaprabhu was at the Godavari river, and he was, this chapter in Caitanya Charitamrita when he was talking with Ramananda Rai. And Ramananda, he would inspire Ramananda, the Christians, to go deeper and deeper in bhakti, to go to the essence of what is bhakti, what is this love really. And it's called the Ramananda Shiksha or Ramananda Samvad. There's you could say it's an own book within Caitanya Charitamrita. Very, very, one of the sweetest parts actually of Caitanya Charitamrita. And there are so many Goswamis, there's so many Swamis, but actually Ramananda Roy was a Grihastha. He was a Grihastha. He was married, he had kids. So again, social etiquette would be transcended. Mahaprabhu went beyond. He would not take someone who is very renounced or has a sannyas title, but he would choose that soul who has the highest degree of bhakti within his heart. And then he would let him speak the essence of bhakti. And you also know the story from from Śrimad-Bhagavatam about King Rahuganath. And there is a story of Jad Bharat. Jad Bharat was the carrier of the palanquin. And King Rahuganath was actually the one who was carried, and he was the renowned king. But because Jad Bharat was such an elevated soul, that actually King Rahuganath came down from his palanquin, he offered obeisances, and he received teachings on the mind from Jad Bharat. So you would say this is Bangi. He makes a bit, he cleans the road, he's carried them. But again, bhakti reigns supreme. Whoever has bhakti in the heart, whoever is qualified, gets the title to talk about spiritual matters. And in the Antya Lila, chapter 16, there is a wonderful story of Kalidas and Yadu Thakur. I don't know if you have read Caitanya Charitamrita. There's a beautiful story. Kalidas is a devotee who, from his whole life, he ate remnants of Mahaprasad from all the Vaishnavas of Bengal. It's been described all the way. There was no Vaishnava in Bengal he hasn't eaten. Okay, maybe there are a few left, but he ate it all. He ate all Mahaprasad. So he was known to even hide in corners, wait until the Vaishnavas would throw away the remnants, and then he would eat this. He was very humble. And he came to Yadu Thakur. And Yadu Thakur was a Bangi. You know what Bangi means? Bangi, he's cleaning the streets. Bangi actually means he's bent. Because in India the brooms are very short. So you have to bend down. So that's where the word Bangi comes from. But Kṛṣṇa actually is Sri Banga. He's bent in 3 ways. So now, Yadu Thakur said, Kalidas, you want to eat something? I give some bhoga to some local Brahmins and they will cook for you. Because in India the custom is that someone from Brahmin could not accept food from someone who is Bangi. It's impossible. It's basically untouchable. So Yadu Thakur said, okay, I give some food to some local Brahmin. He will cook for you, and then you receive consciousness of Brahman. Kalidas said, no, I'm not here for this. I'm about to take the dust off your lotus feet. Yadu Thakur said, no, I'm not qualified to do so. So they had a big fight that was going on. It was the fight of humility. As you sometimes realize, the devotee sometimes has fights of humility. Don't do it. I clean my plate. I'll do it myself. Which is beautiful. It's a very sweet way of interacting. However, Kalidas was hiding again, and because he had given Yadu Thakur a few mangoes, he would hide behind some wall, and whenever the mango pits and the mango peels would be thrown away by Yadu Thakur, he would take it and he would still snitch his Mahaprasad. So, again, he was Bangi, untouchable, Sudra, and still he was a very exalted Vaishnava. So, even here, it's transcendent. Bhakti supersedes any one from down. And then, of course, you know the example of Naimisharanya, when Sutta Goswami came. Sutta Goswami was also of low birth, we all know. But when Sutta Goswami arrived at Naimisharanya, it was clear that he has to be the one talking, because he was the one most qualified. And everyone else, although sadhus, yogis, brahmins, coming from very high and exalted backgrounds, they would naturally give him the seat to talk about, to speak. Śrimad-Bhagavatam. Here again. And you know that example of Hare Thakur. He came from Muslim background, so that was even worse, you could say. More than untouchable. It was not acceptable at all. But, you know, and he wanted to go into the Jagannath temple in Jagannath Puri. And of course he couldn't go in. So, Mahaprabhu could have challenged the Pandavas there and forced them, you know, to, but he said, no, he let it be. And it was a misjudgment because Hare Thakur was not a child. Regardless of the background, regardless whether he's Muslim, regardless whether he comes from a Hindu background, it doesn't matter. His heart is with chanting Nam. His heart is with Bhakti 24/7, so therefore he is now a child. By the way, there is a nice incident. Prabhupada also wanted that his ISKCON devotees would be able to go into the temple, Jagannath Puri. So he actually, the devotees, the disciples of Prabhupada, they arranged a meeting with the local Pandavas. You heard that story? And Prabhupada, he wanted to discuss with them Shastra. So he wanted to bring all these points to tell them, well, Varna doesn't matter, Ashram doesn't matter. So the local Pandavas, they realized that Prabhupada is Acharya. So therefore they didn't come. They were afraid, because they knew when Prabhupada would bring out the verses, no chance. And that would have been recorded, and then that would have been made public. So they didn't come. And actually Prabhupada was so frustrated. I remember that Prabhupada said, and because of this, Lord Jagannath will leave the temple at some point and go to where the devotees worship him with Bhakti. And that was just before Prabhupada started the big Rath Yatras all around the world, where Jagannath literally comes out on every street in all major towns of the world. So again, Bhakti supersedes Varnashram Dham. Yeah. And Bhakti has to come in the front, always, regardless of Varna and regardless of Ashram. We should never judge by the eternals. That's what we learn from all these stories. Whatever is in Bhagavad Gita, Śrimad-Bhagavatam. Of course, we need to, when there is a need, we need to accept a certain structure, but when there is a possibility, we should be able to transcend and see beyond, look beyond. See the essence. We should be essence-seeking devotees, not being standing on the superficial level of, okay, that's a rule, I'm not crossing this rule, but maybe that person has more bhakti. Bhaktisiddhanta, sometimes even he let his disciples sing who had the most horrible voice, but he knew that because the heart was with Kṛṣṇa, so he would let this person sing. So it's not about the musical skills, it's about who is bhakti. So today, we don't have so much of Varnashram Dham anymore. Especially in the West, nobody even knows about it. So then we are not judging by Varna and Ashram, but in the West we are judging by popularity. Does popularity show that someone has bhakti? No, not at all. Or we are judging in the West by likes on Instagram and Facebook. But that is also not showing the degree of bhakti. Or we are judging according to how much money is on the bank account, how wealthy, how much influence a person has. But that is not a degree of, that does not show how much bhakti someone has. So, or some abilities. Someone is smart, someone is very intelligent, or someone is very good with carving wood, whatever it may be. But this is always and yet not a sign for bhakti. So, therefore, we should never judge by the externals. Actually, judging by the externals is the root cause of many interpersonal problems, if not to say of all interpersonal problems. Because we judge by the externals, and you all probably have an experience when you see someone, and then the mind says like, I know how this person is. And then later on you talk to that person, and you realize, what a beautiful soul. And so you fully misjudged the situation. Happened to me probably very happens very often. So it's good to always take the judgment, the calculation away, and just look, try to see through. Where's the heart? Is this a devotee of Krishna? Does that person has love for God, or is that person practicing, let's say, bhakti yoga also on the surface? Better on the surface than no practicing, of course, but still there are certain degrees of practicing Vaishnavas. We know there's Kanishta-adhikari, Madhyama-adhikari, Uttama-adhikari. So the association we seek should be for those devotees who are also not judgmental, who are not judging us. And at the end, love counts. So we shouldn't categorize, because all men are created equal. You know the nice speech of Martin Luther King, and he says, all men are created equal, whether it's male, black and white, Indian, German, lady, man. So these teachings are actually very important even today, especially today, because today judgment is very strong. We see war going on in many countries because of looking to the externals, not looking deeper. So that should inspire us basically to go deeper, to go beyond, and to not stop in our interpersonal relationships on the superficial level. Because we have the most personal philosophy. Bhakti is very personal. It's all about personal relationship. However, sometimes we find ourselves very far away from one another. So we have to learn how to be personal. We can see this in the Caitanya Charitamrita, when the devotees are interacting with Mahaprabhu, how personal they are. They fall unconscious, and then they come back up, and then they glorify themselves, and they fall back unconscious. Such a sweet and personal interaction. Of course, we cannot imitate this. We have to grow and develop this slowly, but it's good to know where to go. The bhakti is a philosophy of personhood, personality. That's very important. So from all these stories and from all the examples I have given, we should learn how to look beyond, to disregard the eternal structure if it's possible, if bhakti is involved. But then at the same time, a Vaishnava always takes the opportunity to respect another Vaishnava. When there's a senior coming in, there's a chance to show affection by respecting. Or when there's a lady coming in, there's a chance of being able to be affectionate. Or if there is someone who is sannyas, we can also show respect and affection there. So that should also be there. There should be some etiquette. But at the ultimate sense, we should look for bhakti. And we should see how we can develop that vision in our interpersonal dealings with devotees. Yeah, that was just a little excursion. I'm going to stop there because the point is probably clear. I wanted to make this one very point, how we can really look deeper and go beyond any social structure, if need be. You guys have some questions? Yeah, Mama, microphone.
You spoke about the hierarchy in the material world. Maybe you can also speak about hierarchy in spiritual world.
That's a good point, actually. Because, I also thought about this point when I was preparing a bit, because there's always a hierarchy. It's a never-ending hierarchy. The hierarchy goes back all the way in the spiritual world. It's actually a very good point. So there's also a qualifying program going on in the spiritual world. So when you guys want to become servants of God, or female servants of Radharani, Manjaris, or Gopis, or Gopas, whatever that might be, the Staibhav, then there's always a qualifying period. It's been described that Vishaka, for example, is very good with instruments. So if you want to become a musician in the spiritual world, there has to be a Vishaka school you have to go through. So Vishaka is your teacher, that there's a hierarchy. And then also we know that when our Guru Saki, as we say, the relationship to our spiritual master, will always be in this hierarchy. We will always follow and serve him, even in the spiritual world. So he's creating in the material world an opportunity for us to serve his lotus feet, our spiritual master. But he's creating in the spiritual world a camp for us to also serve his lotus feet in combination with all the other spirit souls. So hierarchy is always there. It's actually good. It never stops, because if we think we are God, then this is the opposite thinking. That means I have mastered it at some point. There is an end towards my development. But in Bhakti Yoga, it actually never ends. There's always a progression, there's always a learning, there's always a having someone who is superior, but not superior in the sense of slavery, but superior in the sense of love. Because that superior soul has, in some regards, more love for Radha or Kṛṣṇa, where we can learn from. And if we learn from the 8 Sakis, then we know we can never supersede them. Well, there is a way to go to their camps and to be able to serve together with them. So hierarchy is always there, and should be there. It's the eternal principle of Bhakti Yoga. Actually, what would you say? Makes sense.
Yes, makes sense.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu, for the lecture. It was very nice. You spoke about not judging by externals. And yeah, this is something I also struggle a lot with. And I've been told that so often when we're judging the externals, they're more of a reflection of our own sort of difficulties, or insecurities. So how can we basically understand where these judgments are coming from and how to sort of counteract them?
It's a very good question. And then you partially actually said already, because it's a mirror reflection, because whatever is in our heart, we see in someone else. So let's say by the progress of our own bhakti, at some point we won't see any shadows in anyone else, because it's not within us. So there's no resonance, there's no mirror. Because whenever we see this person is not good enough there, that person is here, not good enough there, then usually this has to do something with ourselves. Because when there's some friend, and then you might have a problem with that person, but another friend doesn't even have the slightest problem with that person. So it's a fully different perspective. So then there's no objective shadow on that person, it's a subjective way of looking at this situation. So if we are advancing in bhakti, and if we chetu darpana marjanam, which means to cleanse the mirror of the heart, then eventually we won't see the difficulties, the shadows someone else has. Which does not mean that we might sometimes need to point out certain facts. So we should also not artificially close our eyes. And so when we see there is a disturbing factor of, there is a disharmony between devotees, we should also use our common sense and discrimination to be able to cut through and be able to know what's truth and what's not truth, what is good and what is bad, what is right and what is wrong. But at the same time, when it comes down to our own, let's say, judging of, comparing of who am I in comparing to someone else, that should be gradually purified. And at a certain point, you might not see anything. It said that the Uttama Adhikari, at a certain point, he sees everyone else as a devotee and just himself not. So then at some point that fully reverses. And then you actually see, they're all so advanced. and actually I have some form. So let's say a sign of advancement. A sign of advancement is the humility. The sign of advancement is how much we be able to truly glorify someone else. And you could even say the jewel of a Vaishnava is his character. You know, the way of not being judgmental, or being within the duality of this is my friend, this is my enemy, and to actually transcend the duality. Brahmagutta, Prasanatmana, Sushatina, Kṛṣṇa. There's no lamenting, there's no repulsion, there's no krodha, no desire. So, in the process of our, becoming pure, we slowly see less and less. We might see them. We might see where someone is. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden we are blind to someone's level of advancement, but we are not comparing and judging or putting ourselves above that person or feeling better if we speak bad about someone. Basically, it is the intention. It's the intention why we might criticize something or someone. Because that criticizing of people sometimes is maybe even needed. But the question is, what is the intention of me criticizing someone? Is it because I want to feel better and I feel myself superior than someone? I want to put that person down because I want to be in the spotlight? Or is that because I need to point this out in order for the Vaishnava community to grow and prosper and come to the next level, to create harmony again? So at times we even need to, criticize, you could say. We need to point out the shadow parts of someone. But if the intention is a superior intention, means to actually serve the Lord, serve the Vaishnavas, then it is needed. A guru, for example, is meant to point out all the faults of his disciples. So on one level you could say Vaishnava, but then he needs to point out because it's his duty, and so that his disciples can develop and come to the next level. So it's always the intention of why am I doing this? So when the guru is criticizing, or let's say pointing out faults of the disciple, it's because he is interested in the disciple's progress. Not now I'm the guru, I can read, and I can read hard, and that's all. That's not.
Yeah, Hare Kṛṣṇa.
Maybe we take my Hare Kṛṣṇa.
Actually, my question is linked to common dilemma. Actually, most of us might be having. I'm asking that actually. You're talking about devotion and bhakti, and there is a user life actually where we are carrying out certain responsibility. But my question is actually the devotion can be linked to doing our responsibility honestly, because anyway that is also being driven by Prabhu Jagannatha only. Whatever he has sent us for with a purpose actually to the earth, and if we are carrying out those purpose with honesty, with truthfulness, is it a kind of devotion? Because just his question actually, there is a lot of superficial things are there actually, and you don't know who are the real devotees or who are the real gurus who can guide us to the right path towards devotion. As usual, following everything actually in the right direction, doing it honestly, can we take that path which can to move towards devotion in future?
So say again, but I couldn't really understand all the words. Just the question one more time.
Yeah, the question,
Yeah.
the regular devotion actually, because a lot of confusion is there in terms of gurus and other devotees. Then there's another path of user life, doing things honestly. Which path to take actually to move towards Prabhu Jagannath in future? Yeah.
So you think so? If that's also okay to just have a natural way towards Jagannath performing bhakti instead of exactly the guru?
Yeah.
Okay. So the question would rather be: Is it ultimately necessary to have guru, or can you just perform bhakti on your own in a natural way, following your dharma, maybe following your ashram? That's a good question. Let's say at a certain point Prabhupada would say we cannot come across the guru. But that might be in this life or next life or in 10 lives or in 50 lives. Because the sincerity, let's say, we cannot just bump into the spiritual world. It is always done by someone who takes us by the hand. You could say it's by the process of recommendation. So that you cannot get around recommendation, because otherwise it would be like, I am, because of my own bhakti, now I am here, Kṛṣṇa, and you have to let me in the spiritual world. But because Kṛṣṇa is not really so much liking that attitude, therefore he sends us some representatives. And at a certain point, when the soul is ready enough, what we said with the hierarchy, we also need to accept that level of hierarchy, because we need to be trained. We also need to be trained how to be perfect in our service in the spiritual world. And for that training, usually the Lord sends us some guru, some teacher, who can bring us all the way back home to the spiritual world. So of course, it's not like that's the only, of course, Kṛṣṇa can also personally come and say, okay, Prabhuji, I'll take you out. It's definitely possible. And there are rare cases. Or you can also be so much engaged in chanting Nam, that Prabhu, which is Kṛṣṇa himself, reveals himself in your heart and then basically take you back home, back to Godhead. It's also possible. It could also be that an ascended spiritual master might be appearing to you in the dream. Rāma Goswami, whatever, and then he says, Prabhuji, I'm so satisfied with your service, take you back home. It could also be that a Nitya Siddha, Lalita Saki, comes to you in a dream or in Spurti, which means like you see already. Sakshat Darshan means you might even be fully centrally experienced, but that are rather the exceptions. That is not the standard. The standard is that we usually, whenever we are ready, and Kṛṣṇa knows this as Paramatma in our heart where we stand, at a certain point he brings an external spiritual master, who is a representation of Paramatma, who then brings us back to Kṛṣṇa in the heart, Chaitya Guru. So Kṛṣṇa manifests at a certain point externally for us to have a focus point, so that this focus point can bring us back home to him, to Kṛṣṇa in the heart. So that is usually the standard procedure. And that might take many lifetimes. It's not like, of course it's possible in this lifetime, and we should strive for it. And Prabhupada said we should do our best to just give this one very lifetime to Kṛṣṇa. And it's definitely possible to go back home to Godhead after this lifetime. But maybe for some it's not possible. And so then we take another birth. We take another birth in a Vaishnava family, where there's already a family guru. And then right there from childhood on, you know how to interact with Guruji, and he's guiding you back home. So the standard way is someone else has a question. Prabhuji.
Hare Kr, thank you so much for bringing up this topic and for the wonderful lecture. So, bro, my question is from the other point of view. Let's say, other than judging someone, when we are judged, we are being judged or we are being criticized. So, like, what should be the approach from our side when we get this kind of criticism? And like for me personally, I would say, like as Rikesh Prabhu told, like it is really difficult to to take the criticism, and all of the ego just oozes out and shows like how fallen I am. So Prabhu, like what should be the approach of the end where we get the criticism?
Beautiful question, and we all know that situation when someone criticizes that. We all know how that feels, and we all know there is a certain moment of we can either respond like this or like that. And usually when we respond out of the ego, the situation erupts into something which is not nice. So, because I also sometimes have, naturally, and then it's of course the best perfect way is to Thank you very much, Prabhu, for your criticism. I consider it carefully and will try to implement this in my life. I will be the best way to go. You're not supposed to. That will be the best way, if we can do so. But at times, of course, we also have to see some criticism might not be correct. That is also there. Because we might be in the association with someone who is just accustomed to criticize, and then it would actually be false. It would be bad if we just accept it, because then this person feels confirmed in the way he interacts. If everyone just says, "Oh yeah, Prabhu, thank you so much for the criticism," but actually that person is not entitled to do so. So of course, let's say one should first of all see whether or not the criticism has some ground which is based on some truth. And when you feel like, yeah, it could be that I am like this, or I have done wrong here or there, then of course it is advised to deactivate the ego if possible, as much as possible. Because what I realized when I'm not responding from an ego perspective, then the other person immediately lowers their guns. Immediately. As soon as you say like, okay, I might have done something wrong, then immediately that person lowers their guns, and usually the other person actually starts reflecting as well, and the other person realizes, okay, maybe the criticism, maybe it's not really fully right. And all of a sudden you come to a level where an agreement can actually start taking place. And this is what we want to try to establish, that both sides lower their guns so that there is a way of creating mutual harmony again, to have some level of agreement. But sometimes we are just heavily criticized, and then maybe there's a situation which cannot easily be resolved. So if that is the case, if it's really some severe interpersonal issue, then sometimes it's just to separate for a while, so that everyone is dealing with their own reality, and then at a certain point come back, definitely when the emotions have been subsided. Because if we respond from that heat, the heating moment, then usually it's not kind of good. So if it's a severe interpersonal challenge, it's good to just separate for some time and then come back later. Because usually our heart is our guide. We know when there is something which is still not resolved. And we know when things are resolved. So we can trust that Paramatma is letting us know. We feel if this thing is, if we are good again or not. And if it's not good again, there will surely be another opportunity for us to come back to. And what I realized when we try hard, especially in the dealings with devotees, to re-establishing harmony, Kṛṣṇa is very pleased, and the whole relationship afterwards come on another level, and actually is, something might be destroyed what was there, but then it can create a potentially even deeper relationship. So, with a bit of distance. And sometimes we are with devotees, we just don't click at all. So then we can respect from distance without much personal interaction. It's also wise to, let's say, leave someone at a distance. Because we don't need to necessarily, like respecting someone, that doesn't necessarily, I need to be close, I need to, love that person and always being together with. Respect can also be done from a distance. And we don't need to, at a certain point it neutralizes, and then it's also a way of being. Because after all, we are still in this material world, and we will not be friends with everyone. It's impossible. Even Prabhupada, although he was a pure devotee, he is a pure devotee, but there were also people who were criticizing Prabhupada. Even when Kṛṣṇa was on the planet, there were people, Duryodhana, who would criticize. Or even when Mahaprabhu was on the planet, there were a lot who criticized him and also criticized pure devotees. So you will not get around criticism. but the devotee in a wise, like we should wisely see what is possible, where to put our energy in, and when to just keep distance. Especially if it's like relationships with good friends we have in Bhakti Yoga, then we should try to re-establish that relationship, because sometimes the Lord also wants to see if we want to and how we re-establish that harmony that He also likes. And if we do, then there is some reward, something in there.
Like test and result, huh?
Something.
How he acts on chastising, if someone is chastised,
Yeah.
how he reacts back.
How to react back?
Yeah, that's what, like, he may be testing.
Yeah, exactly. And then how you respond to the chastisement. That is, like we see with Durvasa Muni and Ambarish Maharaj. Ambarish Maharaj, he didn't even know what was going on. Basically, he was not going in resonance with the whole story of criticism. And of course, that is a very advanced level, and we cannot imitate because we know when it hits us. We also cannot pretend that it didn't happen. So we can always use this as an inner compass. Where are we? Is the relationship good again? And sometimes we have to keep distance for good, but then there's still some respect, but it's more on a distant base. And if it's a good friend, we used to have a good relationship and something happened, then usually the Lord wants to see us doing so that we can re-establish this beautiful relationship. Thank you. Someone else. What? Oh yeah, maybe you take the next one. So many questions.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I have a question. Like how to identify our varna?
Or varna. Yeah, that's good. The ashram is easy, right? The color you usually tell us, right? But what is the varna exactly? So you could say what is said about the Swadharma. So what is my own? What is my nature? Traditionally in India, you would have an astrologer. You would have some Brahmins who would just look at the body, and they would already, by the physiognomy, that they would see what is the mind behind. So is it a Brahmin? Is it a Kshatriya? And you sometimes see it also. Huh? If you see some people, you see like they're different than fine and fragile people. So by the physical appearance, you can definitely see already in what direction it goes. But the varna is connected to your own nature. I would say the best way is just to see where we naturally feel attraction to it. Like, for example, for me, making money is fun. For someone else, it is really a headache because they really have to struggle and pay bills. But for me, that would not be so difficult. For someone else, sitting down and reading 3 hours, 4 hours, just books is a natural thing. So by the things you like, you can, to some extent, let's say, judge or ascertain which varna you are. And it's always good to go by Guru, Shastra and Sadhu. So you could ask definitely your friends, because they might see certain aspects of yourself you don't even see yet. I know there's some scar in when the baby is born. Remember, then you have some Lakshmi, you have some Śrimad-Bhagavatam, you have some, I don't know, some weapon, and then you have some tool, and then wherever the baby crawls towards, you would say, okay, he's a Brahmin, he will be a Kshatriya. So, but still, that is not maybe ultimately true, because there can also be changing. But I would say a good friend, or even a guru who has has a good vision, just by looking at you, just by looking what you like, what you dislike, what is your nature, he could easily ascertain what one would be in. And eventually, of course, as we said in the beginning, it said also that born in Kali Yuga means we are all kind of Sudra. So coming from that humble perspective, we can see what are the qualities we have, what are the tendencies which are in our heart, what is our nature, and try to also live according to that nature. So if the Vaishya Dharma is the Dharma, then we will see that making money, or we will feel making money is not a big deal. We do it naturally. We don't have to stretch ourselves. Or if we are an academic, and if you love to study, if you make your PhD in no time, without effort, then you know some Brahminical qualities might be there. Or if you're just satisfied with doing, a 9-to-5 job, which is not bad, then, and you don't have so many higher aspirations in life, then some Sudra qualities might be there. Or if you're just keen on going to the army, there are many opportunities, plenty of opportunities these days to engage, then, and some people really love that. I know some, they don't mind going on the battlefield, sitting in the tank, killing people basically. Then there is some inclination. So you could go by your own feeling, by your own nature, because we also know ourselves, and we could ask our surrounding what they feel we are.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhuji. Can I ask another follow-up question? So it's from childhood we are kind of brought up in a way according to what society engineering, doctor, all that. So we are just pushed, and then there are levels. Okay, now next is this, and we don't have exposure to multiple things like Kshatriya qualities, Brahmanic, or Vaishya, or so it's very difficult to identify, and it's
Your own nature.
Yeah.
It's true. The setup in the society we live in is not very distinguished. It's not, because usually, as I said, Brahmin gets a special education, special training. Kshatriya gets a different. Kshatriya needs martial arts training, but also how to be honorable, to be truthful, to be responsible. But the setup in the society we live on obviously is not there anymore. So it's difficult. I admit it's difficult. Because also when we go to school, like in Germany, we have a forced school system. You have to go to school when you are 6-7 years old, and you have to go. It's forced. At least 9 years, you'd be forced to, in a very crucial time, give away 9 years of your life to some institution, which might not always have your best nature and interest. So therefore, it's true. It's not so easy by what society offers us, but still we can still try to look at what is our calling, where do I naturally feel drawn to. If I'm I might be forced into going to school, my parents might be even forced me to study, but then at a certain point there's a moment we can say, okay, stop now. At least that's what I did when right after school, basically I said for 6 years stop. Because I realized I don't want to just be in the middle of one after the next, and then at a certain point you are in a situation where you feel like, okay, I didn't really want to be there, but now you are. So that's why I said, okay, now with 20 I went to the temple and I said, okay, here I am, and I made quite a 6 years break. And that was actually, I know not everyone might be able these days to do this. Back then it was also a bit more easygoing. And you could be signed in as a student and receive some money, and you didn't even have to go to any lecture. These days it's a bit harder. But let's say there is a way. When you really want to find out what is your nature, who you are for Kṛṣṇa and in your own life, I'm sure Kṛṣṇa is creating an opportunity to do so. Even if it's you go on a little tour for 1 year, just to get out and find yourself, realize who you are. Many of my friends, they went to, on a long pilgrimage. They just went for 1 year to India, to many different places, or even in Europe, there are beautiful monasteries and places of pilgrimage you can go, just to get out of our usual surrounding and to tap into a new environment. That is usually very helpful, because when you're in your standard environment, you kind of think the standard way. If you go out of that comfort zone for some time, you start reflecting about yourself differently. And then different thoughts come up, different feelings come up, different ideas come up. And then you might realize, hey, okay, I studied this, but actually it's not really my thing. And then to have the guts to say, even though I spent 3 years of study, but I'm still doing something else, is yet another thing. But better to do this earlier than later. Because when you are 50 years stuck in a situation you don't want, then frustration comes in. I heard there was a survey that 2/3 of people, I guess in Germany, they are in a job they don't like. So they're just in the job which pays the bills. You know, it's convenient because somehow it's easy, you know how the things go. And you get your money, you can pay your bills, but it's not touching your heart really. And we can do this for some time, and sometimes even it is necessary because we need to compromise. But we shouldn't be stuck in that situation for long. And usually we also feel there's an inner call. When we know it's too much, then we had this, my wife is also redirecting to some other occupation, and there was a call. And you can go in resonance with that call, or you can just say, oh no, well, I stay here because it's easy money. But usually if we dare to follow up on that call, Kṛṣṇa will provide and will bring us into the next, will bring us in contact with people who will be bringing us to what's closer to our nature. There's always a way. So, someone else, or are we good? So then, thank you so much. It was a pleasure for me to be here, to see all these inquisitive Vaishnavas. Thank you so much for always coming every weekend, making it such a beautiful program. I want to make some advertisement for our big festival coming up next week. For all of you who do not know what to do next week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we have Bhakti Bloom Festival, which is 1 hour away from here in Neuruppin. Highway direction Hamburg. I can send you direction. So we have a festival. There are quite some Kirtan stars showing up. I know Gauravani is coming. I know Vishwambar is coming. Radhika is coming. Satyananda Maharaj will be there. So I guess it's a beautiful Vishwambar. We have who else? Johnny Harrison there? Nah, she's in Amal Harni. Hare Kirtan stuff. Vrindavaneshwari. So we have top Kirtanieros, you could say. So if you don't know what to do, it starts on Friday afternoon at 4 p.m. goes all the way to Sunday late afternoon. bhaktibloom.com. You'll find all the information. Thank you so much. Beautiful. Hare Krishna. So,
HG Maitreya Muni Prabhuji ki